All righty, welcome back, everyone. Welcome back. If just the last people in the back can come ahead and take their seats, we'll go ahead and continue. Just before we start, un petit mot pour les francophones si besoin. Il y a l'interprétation avec les casques, si vous avez besoin. I was just saying if we need interpretation, there is interpretation toward French if anyone does need it. So the first part of the morning, of course, we focused on blue carbon, we focused on blue food. We're now going to look at the effect growing human and environmental pressure is having on the world's coasts. This next session is going to be looking at the best ways to build sustainability in coastal areas. For this now, would you please welcome for this panel co-convened by Climate Tech, the lead developer for ocean solutions at Nature Metrics, Nathan Giraldi, the co-founder and CEO of eConcrete, Ido Sella, the co-founder of EcoWave Power, Ina Braverman, the director of international operations at Blue Action Lab, Jeff Stoic, and the moderator for this session, the founding partner of Ocean Fortune Capital and co-founder of the Blue Marine Foundation, Chris Gorrell-Barnes. Welcome to you all.
Right. Hello, everybody. It's very nice to be here in Monaco. I'm Chris Gorrell-Barnes. I'm the co-founder of the Blue Marine Foundation. We've been working with Prince Albert and the foundation for about 10 years now on doing a lot of work with the Blue Marine Yacht Club, of which His Serene Highness is their patron. And we also have a bike ride, which if anybody feels like getting fit, you can bike from London to Monaco to help protect the ocean. And that's been a very successful initiative that's raised many £1 million over the year. My latest venture is Ocean Fortune Capital. We're a €150 million impact fund. We invest in growth stage businesses that help support innovations within the blue economy. And today we're here to talk about coasts. We've got a great panel. I think, we've heard this morning, a great speech this morning, and we've heard from John Kerry and His Serene Highness about the fact that time for action is now. We've only got 10 years to effectively save the ocean and therefore, 8 years to effectively save the ocean and therefore save humanity. But where is that real pressure going to be? Where is the first line of defense? It's coastal communities. 3/4 of the world's population live within 50 kilometers of the coasts, right? So these are the areas that are going to get eroded from sea level rises. We're already seeing that. We're already seeing mass climate migration in some of the world's poorest countries because of the sea level rise. We're having nature absolutely annihilated in these coasts. I think only 15% of the world's coasts are now in their natural state. So huge building work causing huge problems with runoff, with sea level rises and erosion. And of course, you've got the issue around food and, all of the areas where biodiversity is at its highest is in the coastal areas. So it's absolutely fundamental that we focus innovation, solutions and investments on protecting, maintaining and restoring our coastlines. And we've got some great innovators and oceanpreneurs, maybe we could call you guys, that are here, are looking at solutions here. And we're going to focus this conversation on, how do we look at data solutions? How do we look at adaptation, restoration solutions? How do we look at energy solutions? How do we look at food solutions around the world's coasts? So if I could ask you all just to introduce yourselves, a little bit about your background, why this is such an important area to you, and what your business is actually doing to try and have a positive impact on the coast.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Ido Sella. I'm a marine biologist and co-founder of eConcrete, a company that's specializing in sustainable development of coastal infrastructure, specifically focusing on concrete. As Chris mentioned, 50% of world population resides along coastlines. And if we look at the prediction of how we're gonna armor our coastlines against sea level rise and increased storminess, it doesn't look good. As marine biologists focusing on ecological restoration and the impact of human development on marine biology and marine ecology, it's a very straightforward answer that we need to build a bit differently. And 70% of coastal infrastructure is concrete-based worldwide, and you can look out the window and understand that the materials that meet the water is usually concrete, or let's say mostly concrete, and that's the reason as marine biologists we focused on a solution for the concrete industry, specifically for marine construction.
So hi, my name is Ina Braverman. I'm the founder and the CEO of EcoWave Power. Our company developed a unique, innovative technology for generation of clean electricity from ocean and sea waves. We have been operating a grid-connected power station in Gibraltar since 2016. We will be opening a power station this year in the port of Los Angeles, also a power station in the port of Jaffa in Israel, and we're developing projects in Portugal, in Spain, and in other locations around the world. I'm very happy to be here today because one of the locations that we really would like to work with is Monaco. You have amazing breakwaters, as you can see, and as Ido pointed out from the window. And these breakwaters, they're built to protect the marinas, they're built to protect the coastal population, but they're not very good for the environment. So if we could take all these breakwaters and turn them into a source of clean electricity, that would be much, much better. Plus our floaters, which connect to the external side of the breakwater, protect them against erosion. So basically they take the destructive effects of the wave and use it to turn it to a source of clean electricity. And that's it. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nathan, and I am the senior ocean scientist at Naturemetrics. And in Naturemetrics, we monitor marine ecosystems through environmental DNA. And that means basically taking a few liters of water, filtering that water, and taking the eDNA out of that and identifying the animals that are present around in that water. And why that's important today, I think most important is we have a lot of solutions, and these solutions are needed. But what we really need is a scalable and standard way of monitoring the environment once we put all these solutions into effect. And I think eDNA is probably one of the best ways to do that. We can put our kits into the hand of anyone and anywhere in the world, and even my 8-year-olds can use it, and they can collect and filter the water, and they can send it back to our labs in the UK, and they sequence that DNA, and we can we return you a list of all the species we have in that water. And so I think it's one of the important foundations to all these solutions that we're talking about today.
Good to be here, you all. Jeff Stoic, Blue Action Lab. And I couldn't agree more that the time is nigh for these solutions. And what the Blue Action Lab is doing in the island of Grand Bahama is facilitating and accelerating precisely the kinds of technologies that you're hearing about here today, the kind of science you're hearing about today. The island of Grand Bahama is really on the front lines of climate change. Low-lying coral atoll in Hurricane Alley. Hurricane Dorian in 2019 covered 70% of the island in ocean water. The aquifer was spoiled. You're still getting salt water out of the taps across the island of Grand Bahama. But on a hopeful note, Grand Bahama has world-class infrastructure, one of the deepest ports on the eastern seaboard of the United States, one of the busiest transshipment hubs in the Western Hemisphere. We have a regulatory environment through the free trade zone that allows us to do precisely this, to expedite the sorts of technologies that we want to see as the foundation of the industries and economies of the 21st century. We have coastal environments that are unparalleled. Coral reefs, seagrass beds, mangroves, Gulf Stream, 260,000 square mile exclusive economic zone in which these technologies can be tested, scaled, further financed, and then deployed around the world. So great to be here.
Thank you. 4 very interesting outlooks and solutions to coastal crisis. I'm a big believer in data being an absolutely key tool to solving the crisis. I think the ocean has been underdated for too long, and if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So I'd really like to focus a little bit on data and why that's so important. I think across all these areas, I'd like to understand how you're using data within your various businesses to be able to sort of explain what needs to be done and actually be able to measure what you are doing to protect the coast. And Nathan, I just wanted to start with you and whether there's, the data you're looking at the sort of the nature solutions we're going to talk about blue carbon a little bit later and where that comes in, but actually how you're utilizing data.
Yeah, I think, diversity and changes in communities and the environment it's a complex problem and it's messy. And, it's very hard even for now. I spent 20 years of my life, surveying fish in the water. And, but we were only looking at fish. And that's just such a small little slice of the tree of life. And we really need to be looking at the whole tree of life to get an idea of what's happening, what change is happening from bacteria to blue whales. And so I think eDNA, is a good first step in doing that and providing kind of that big data that we need. And I guess kind of the analogy I often think about is, I am still amazed when I turn on Google Maps that within a minute, it tells me exactly when I arrive, right? How does it do that? Traffic is extremely complex and messy, just like diversity. But that's the kind of data, when you start tracking cars, thousands of cars, tens of thousands of cars, you can put that into big data analytics, and you can predict how long it's going to take you to get there. And it's that big data that we need, to start collecting across the globe and through time. We need to start collecting this diversity data so that can lead into similar models like you have in Google Maps, so we can start predicting where we're going, where that environment's going.
Thank you. And Ina, how are you using data at Wave Power?
So in the wave energy sector, we're lucky enough to have a lot of wave energy data. So we can just use satellite data and get wave information, how much kilowatt per meter there is, what is the wave height, what is the wave period, from these data sources that are already available. However, I think that is kind of missing in the wave energy industry is that I think the industry doesn't have like a one unique kind of, let's call it AI software that would determine the reliability, that could determine reliability of different technologies. Because there's different types of technologies in wave energy. There is offshore technologies, which are like in the middle of the ocean, and there is a technology of eco-wave power, which we can see here on the screen, which connects to breakwaters and piers and jetties. And basically what our company is putting a strong emphasis on, together with, in our collaboration with the Électricité de France, the French national electrical company, is developing a software that can be sold and used by other developers that would tell them exactly how much energy they produced in comparison to the anticipated energy for the site. So everybody knows what is anticipated, and now we need to create kind of the software that would really determine the efficiency. And then the industry will become much more successful, because in wind and solar, companies are already doing it. And when you can forecast accurately, you can also get access to debt financing, and that's key for commercialization of a new sector.
Have you integrated the system with any aquaculture?
Aquaculture?
Yeah.
No, not right now.
Is that possible, that actually you could use this system to be the energy that's needed for aquaculture farming?
We can. So we're looking at a number of possible combinations. So we can combine wave energy with different like fish farms that are out in the ocean that need electricity. We can combine it with desalination, because the movement of our floater actually creates pressure before it turns to electrical energy. We can connect it, like in Greece, we're working on a project to connect it to a waste facility. Like, so the waste facility receives energy directly from the waves. So you can connect it to anything. And luckily, as you said, most of the world population is living on the coastlines. There's a lot of businesses on the coastline. So definitely it will be much cheaper to transmit energy from floaters directly to the location of use.
And e-concrete, how are you looking at data, and how are you measuring?
So for us as marine biologists, data is everything, but it's also reflecting on other things, which is timeline. Collecting data on processes that take a long time is a challenge within the industry, and zooming in on understanding how, for example, if we build a new quay wall in a port, it will take 2 years to generate the data that can be publishable and can be usable. So just taking into account, and I heard it also on the last session, the R&D process for our company took 5 years. So it's 5 years of collecting data across different regions in the world and assessing the technology before you can even start to implement it. And what happened is that since then, we have more than 40 projects worldwide using e-concrete technology for coastal infrastructure, which generate data on a yearly basis. And suddenly we started to understand we're sitting on a knowledge gap that was not available in other resources. Nobody actually know what happened in working waterfronts, in ports, in shipyards. And suddenly we started to get this very, very important ecological information. So it's used internally for redefining our next targets and to work on our R&D, but it's also used by our clients to assess themselves and compare themselves to other, for example, ports that work in the same region or even in other regions.
Could you just say who your main clients are?
We work from a government level to the private entities. We have a project with the state of New York, the Rotterdam Port, the Port of Hamburg, Port of San Diego, New York, New Jersey Port Authority. We work on bridge foundations. Brooklyn Bridge Park in New York, the foundation is based on e-concrete. Now we are going more and more into the offshore industry, specifically on the way that the planned offshore wind turbines are gonna be installed. Think about an industry that in the past, the offshore industry was very restricted to a certain time, okay, until the resource has vanished. So talking about 30 to 50 years of a platform sitting out there, sucking everything out of the ground, and then you need to decommission it. When we're going to offshore wind, the area is probably going to be there for years to come. And the technology might change. So they might change the turbines, they might change the cables, but the area that was decided, that will be the area that will generate the energy for a very long time. So all the issues of how we address the impact that we create on this area is more strict and going through a more thoughtful process. So this is another market we operate now.
And Jeff?
And certainly data collection and application is vitally important, but I think equally important is making that data through analytics, visualization, as was mentioned earlier, making that intelligible to community stakeholders whose buy-in is required, and making that actionable to policymakers and government officials, certainly who play a key role in enabling the kinds of technologies we're discussing today.
Yeah, and we all set these ambitious targets for ocean conservation, 30 by 30. We want to, protect the high seas. What do you think could be restorative targets that we could set for coastlines, Jeff?
There were lots of discussions on Monday about sort of standardized metrics for sustainability in the oceans and coastlines, and it's a very difficult challenge. It's something that I think, and I would look to some of the key scientists here today to help us decide on. But it's not a simple task, certainly.
Come on, you must have some targets that you can set.
Point to the scientist. I think maybe the economist. I'd point the finger in other directions, is because there's so many other factors than just science behind that. And it's social and economic, so yeah, that'd be tough. I think 30 by 30 is a good goal.
Right now, the world is being very, very ambitious. Everywhere, United Nations, European Union, the US, everybody are saying they're going to go net zero emissions by 2050. Not going to happen unless we incorporate all renewable energy sources, including wave energy and tidal energy and algae energy and any type of new and creative energy, because solar and wind, unfortunately, are not available throughout the day and cannot achieve this capacity. However, a realistic target, I would say, is for countries to make certain policies and legislations, and ports as well, and municipalities, that if you have an unused breakwater, which is not prime real estate, turn it into a source of clean electricity, give back to the environment. Like, you don't have to build anything new to do that. In the future, in my dream, let's call it, I would hope that there would be a legislation saying that every time you want to build a new structure, and even in Israel, where I come from, which is a very small country, they're planning right now to build like hundreds of new breakwaters because of the rise of the water levels, because of climate change. If you could incorporate wave energy already from the design phase, it would save so many years in policy and approval and licensing. So that can be a realistic way of going forward. And setting like realistic goals, not like saying, okay, by 2050, we're going to be carbon neutral, but saying, okay, in 10 years, we're going to have 500 megawatts of this source and 1,000 of this source. Like going a bit smaller and not trying to push the date so far.
There's only one answer. It's biodiversity. That's the only, as I see it, and if you look at all the processes that were discussed,
you
even
answered
this
my
morning,
next question.
It's only biodiversity. If you look at the solution on the previous session, they addressed different species. They addressed seaweed, and they addressed urchins and sea urchins, and they addressed different species that have the ability to do, for example, carbon sequestration. If you look at coastal protection, if we will restore the biodiversity, we'll bring back those species that are what we call engineering species, we can protect ourselves better. If we can harness our infrastructure to provide us ecosystem services through recruiting different species. If we not going to keep and put biodiversity almost as the same level, and unfortunately, I think it's behind. I think the focus on carbon neutral need to be shifted a bit, because the tools for addressing carbon neutral is going through biodiversity. Then we can actually have something manageable and doable. And also, if we look at the next generations, and we're dealing quite a lot in our technology with the next generation, because the breakwater that you see here outside was designed for 100 years. Okay, that's the new standard in coastal construction, between 60 years to 120 years design life. Everything we put in the water is going to be there either for between 60 to 120 years design life. Think about the impact of those infrastructure on the next generation. So if we're focusing on bringing back biodiversity with that target, we're bringing so many other targets that are going to so many different items and in the industry, and I think this needs to be the main goal.
Chris,
So
very quickly, just to jump in.
Yeah.
Biodiversity is key. 30 by 30 is a great mark to aim for, but in our conversations with the Bahamian government, and certainly not exclusive there, it's a non-starter in and of itself. The conversation immediately shifts to, you're going to lock up in 30 by 30, what are you doing for GDP? What are you doing for poverty alleviation? How are you going to stimulate the economy? So I think an important part of the conversation is showing that coastal resilience and ocean resilience innovation can be good for biodiversity and can be good for poverty and good for GDP.
So, and I agree, and I think biodiversity is a very good way that we can actually create some targets, and it brings me to nature-based solutions and securitization, because I think the way that we can actually solve this is actually by putting a value on these solutions, right? At the moment, we talked about mangroves earlier, right? You're putting mangroves in the coastline. This is probably our best form of defense, right? From sea level rising, from protecting juvenile fisheries, from mitigating, coasts against storm surges and sea level rising. But what is the value of that plant to that city or to that town, right? Okay, we're getting there with putting a value on it from a carbon sequestration perspective. How much blue carbon is sequestered in that mangrove? There's still some work to be done. Where is it, in the head, the tail, or in the seabed? But we're getting there, and there's going to be a value on that, which is going to be really helpful for local communities. But how do we put a value on that from how it is protecting the coastline? So I guess my next question is, looking at nature-based solutions, I know you're doing some stuff with oysters. I'm a massive fan of oysters and oysters regeneration and restoration. You're doing something in New York. Just looking at how you're looking at nature-based solutions. Are there opportunities with wave power? I know you're looking at that. I know that you're looking at funding some solutions with fisheries. If we could just talk a little bit about nature-based solutions within your spheres.
So I'll start. And I'll start with a fact. If we'll take a bar of concrete and we'll put pressure on it, it will break at a certain point. If we let oyster grow on it, it will break 10 times. It will be 10 times stronger. Okay, so even in terms of resiliency, even in terms of infrastructure performance, we want to have fouling community, calcitic organisms, oysters, corals, etc., growing on our concrete infrastructure, because it's just a win-win solution. It's affecting the biodiversity, it's affecting the water quality, etc., etc. If we look specifically at oyster, I can give you an example. We now in the process of a large project happening in New York State. The tip of Staten Island, there's a town there that's called Tottenville that got severely hit during Superstorm Sandy, and basically lost the beachfront and also the first street and also life during that storm. The solution that was designed by the Army Corps of Engineers and by others was a chain of breakwaters. And what came up is that Tottenville was the capital of oyster cultivation, also oyster collection in 120 years ago. That was where all the oyster were running from the northeast of the U.S. inside for human consumption. There's no oyster there anymore, none. And the breakwater was designed with 3 targets: how we promote back target species, including the oysters, how we protect the shoreline and comply with all the requirements for coastal construction and ecological and engineering, and at the same time also supporting the local communities. We started this with a discussion with the clamming industry there, then working hand in hand with the Billion Oyster Project, showing that we can massively grow oysters, local oysters on concrete, even better than other materials out there in like bluestone and other, and incorporating those elements into the breakwater. So basically creating a living breakwater. And I think a lot of the recognition was back from the regulator. State of New York was facing mitigation cost for this project. This is a project which is around $110 million in construction, was facing $18 million in mitigation cost for just displacing of water, of U.S. water, what's called U.S. water fill. And the Army Corps actually acknowledged this structures as self-mitigating structure from the mud line up to the mean high water. Which means if you think about a breakwater, most of its volume is underwater. So mitigation costs dropped down to almost 4 or 5 million. This opened a market. This changed the market, because suddenly solutions that need to be proven and backed up scientifically by third parties, universities, academic research, can go and be kind of a currency of building more responsibly in the waterfront.
And who'd believe it? When every time you eat your oysters and you just leave the shell, at the moment, in most countries, those shells are just going into landfill, right? And those are incredibly valuable, that if they're actually taken back, they can be put back in the water, and they act as not only a great line of defense for improving, giving you a better chance of the issues with erosion, but also it enables other biodiversity and species to grow on it, because it acts as a sort of natural habitat for other species to grow. We're putting 1 million oysters in the Solent in the UK at the moment, because they clean the water. So when you do eat oysters, do think about each one filters about 300 litres of water before you eat them. So sometimes question where they come from, but they are amazing line of defence in cleaning the water, but also acting to protect coastal communities. So and you into nature-based solutions, and how would that fit into Wave?
So first of all, we're providing the communities with clean electricity, which will take down the carbon emissions, which are a significant problem.
Even more important today.
Exactly, which are a significant problem of ports. Ports are unfortunately one of the highest polluting entities in the world. Second of all, we're protecting the breakwater against erosion. And here maybe we should collaborate with Eco Concrete. He will make the breakwater 10 times stronger, and I will connect the floaters, and then we have a great
perfect collaboration.
Exactly, we have a great combined solution. We can provide the two most missing things in the world are energy and water. So again, we can use the movement of the floaters to generate pressure and then do desalination for the local communities. Workplaces, for example, a lot of remote islands that don't have access to, national grids, they need electricity, and right now they're burning diesel, which is both very expensive and very polluting. Can you imagine what happens if there's a diesel spill in the Maldives? They're built on tourism, like that's not a good thing for them. Renewable energy can actually protect also their main industries, their main economies, create new industry that didn't exist there before. So I think like really doing wave energy or other projects in proximity to coastal populations, islands, and so on, have many, many benefits.
Great. Nathan, and then just so you guys can start thinking about the next question, it's going to be about funding. I know, Jeff, you look at private-public partnerships, but in all these solutions, they're going to require capital from the private sector and capital from the public sector. So I'm going to ask you the next question about how are you looking at the funding? What are the gaps? What are the opportunities? But first, you want to just talk about the nature-based solutions?
Sure, yeah. And I think, as was mentioned before, it's really about, not targeting one nature-based solution like carbon sequestration, but it's about looking at different layers, right? About looking at coastal erosion and about fisheries production. And this goes back to what we're talking about, protection goals, and even that we can link it to GDP. It's about proving to people that it's worth it, Sometimes it's bad, when you want to look at nature for nature's sake, but the reality is we need to incentivize it to protect it. And I think we really need to move that way and think about it that way, and think about standardized ways to try to do that. Because in the end, we're looking at two crises, and we discussed this a little bit about biodiversity and the climate crises, and they're one and the same. We can't go about it in two separate ways. And I think all of that is kind of wrapped up in ecosystem adaptation is the way we're looking at it. Because we're not going to be able to recover it the way it was. But what we can do is try to, prevent collapse and look at how we can make those communities more adaptable to what's happening to them. And so I think, nature-based solutions and making sure, because not one single nature-based solution is going to be that silver bullet, and laying those together is really important as we look towards solutions.
I agree.
To answer your first question first, we have two key examples that I'd like to highlight. Our nonprofit arm is planning a 8,000-acre mangrove restoration project on the north shore of Grand Bahama, mangroves that were devastated again by Hurricane Dorian in 2019. We have a workforce development component. We're working with nonprofits across the island. It's a wonderful project, but even more important to highlight is on the coral reef side of things. Breakwater for storm surge, biodiversity, livelihoods, fisheries, et cetera, aesthetics, tourism. Our entire model at the Blue Action Lab was built around one company initially, our anchor company, Coral Vita, recent winner of the Earthshot Prize.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks to them. They're, I think, a key demonstration of the work that we're trying to do. We ultimately want to build an entire, forgive the pun, ecosystem of companies like Coral Vita working across various verticals in ocean and coastal resilience, renewable energy, decarbonizing the maritime sector, aquaculture, agriculture, on down the line. But at the core of what we do are these two examples of nature-based solutions.
And we need that, how do we put a value on nature? How do we actually put a value on a healthy coral reef from a tourism perspective? How do we put a value on a fish alive as opposed to dead? You look at a country like the Maldives, right? A grouper that's alive that's going to bring, hundreds of thousands of dollars of divers and snorkelers is worth way more than that grouper is on a plate. So actually, how do you work with the local communities, and how do you put a value on these nature-based solutions and on, the wonders under the sea?
Valuing them is important. Net present value is important, but I do caution against monetization of nature in the respect that if in an equation the cost-benefit analysis doesn't add up, well then we dispense with that particular resource. So I want to be careful about preserving the intrinsic value of some of these resources that we might not be able to monetize, but also understanding that sustainability or restoration is a moving target. And so that's why for us, and all kudos and respect to the specialists on the stage and in the audience, but that's why as a confessed generalist, we are very much trying to build the enabling conditions to facilitate all of these sorts of technologies to foster, to complement each other, because we don't know what the particular issue and therefore the particular solution will be down the line.
So let's switch to funding. I'm really interested to see what are your funding requirements? How do you look at your fundraising? What's the sort of split between public, private?
Sure. Before that, I want to point you to your last questions regarding how do we evaluate the performance of nature-based structures. There's a beautiful papers published 6 months ago by Mike Beck on evaluating the benefit, the financial benefit of coral reefs. It's beautiful work. And saying and going back to funding, well, maybe it's what I mentioned earlier. Environmental technologies take time to develop. And we had the issue of stepping out of the academy and looking for an investor and telling him, oh, we developed this. It was tested very nicely in the lab. Now we need 5 years of funding to do a proof of concept. And think about how long it took us to find an angel investor that was willing to fund a research for a proof of concept. And we managed to do it with a great bunch of people that were supportive on the dream in the beginning. And once you get to a pilot level and once you get to a small project, then the process is much easier. But I think what is missing is that portion that can support environmental technologies in a very, very early age, because this is where they are very, very sensitive. They cannot show ROI. It's not that they can show the code and how the code is working on the software. For them to show results, it's sometimes a matter of years. So there is a gap that need to be kind of a bridge by different entities, and I think it's super important that the industry will know that this is need to happen. Later on, I must say that we're a pure impact company. We're here to change the way coastal waterfronts will look and function. That's the reason we opened the company. And once you get the message out, and there is a lot of impact investment that is focusing, as long as you're showing different factors and you show a good business strategy, then they're willing to believe in you and invest in you. And I think that was a more easy process, but only on a later stage.
Do you see an opportunity out here?
Yeah, definitely.
Tell us about it.
So if you think about Monaco, so first of all, specifically in Monaco, it's very unique in the way that they're addressing their resources and natural resources. I wish you can see that in other places in the world. If you look at the work, the land reclamation work that was done, it was done with an extensive scientific work before that. It was the ecological impact of the infrastructure was evaluated and designed before the bidding process. It's a very, very unique unique situation, not addressing just the caissons that were used to build the new reclamation, but also the general impact about it, and also the monitoring plan. So I think this is a case study for how you address the resource. You need to bridge between sustainability and development. And in order to do that, you need to go into, for example, project like land reclamation in a very thoughtful and designed way. And that's what the process that we saw in Monaco. It's actually also the process that we see now in Hong Kong, finalizing 5 or 6 years of pure data collection and analysis of different technology towards their upcoming land reclamation.
One more question before I jump to Ina. Who's doing it brilliantly at the moment?
There was places to be better, but Port of San Diego is addressing those issues in a beautiful way. And also, I must say, like a side note, working with ports, it's not an easy task or a fun process. You can take it everywhere to where you want, but it's
Except in Grand Bahama.
But it's usually a very long process. And what we see is a change in the port industry. Port of Rotterdam, we're now dealing with key walls. Okay, so Panamax within the Port of Rotterdam, the biggest port in the world, they're building their new quay walls in a more sustainable way, thinking about those factors. We see that in the Port of San Diego. The reason that they mentioned the Port of San Diego, that the process was really fast. From the time that the sustainability team recognized the technology until it was implemented, it was a matter of a year. This is super, super fast, but it's a trend. We now work extensively in Spain. We're leading a Horizon 2020 project called Living Ports, where we modifying the infrastructure of the Port of Vigo. Port of Vigo in Spain is the largest fishing port in Europe. And basically replacing seawalls, quay walls, mooring systems, parts of the breakwater, with our technology, and the support of the European Union on that factor is immense. And really if you look now at the calls that are coming from the European Union, they're very focused on applicable technologies that can uplift environmental factors.
Fantastic. Ina, on funding.
Finally. So regarding funding, so on the bright side, we have funding. That's already good news. Our company is recently got publicly traded on NASDAQ, stock symbol WAVE, important. So basically, we're currently funding our project through equity investment and also through grants. So we're leveraging on investment by grants that we're receiving, like from the European Green Deal, from Innovate UK. We submitted now with the Alta Sea in the Port of Los Angeles to build back better the Biden program. So that's the good part of that. The bad part, I would say, and what does not enable really fast commercial rollout for wave energy sector, let's say, is the fact that at the moment, because of the novelty of the technology, there is no debt financing available. Equity is the most expensive type of financing that you can get. And sitting and we have so many orders and sitting and waiting for a grant, or each time building one project and then doing an equity round and then building another project, that's not the best way to make an industry like happen big time, you know? So I think this is something that is really important that needs to change. As soon as that financing will become available for wave energy, just like it happened for wind and solar, we will see much more, you know, assets of wave energy being deployed worldwide. So that's, I think, the key.
Great. And
Yeah, so investment for nature metrics has actually been not a problem. I think people realize, that we're missing this. That diversity is very important, but we're missing the gap. How do we measure it? It's already come up a few times, And so yeah, we're just going through another raise, and yeah, we just have to be careful we're not growing too quick. I think so. It's a really good situation for us. So yeah,
got to grow quite quick. We've only got 7 years, right?
what's that? Yeah. 7 years. So
You're doing okay. 7 years, enough time.
We started our work, our nonprofit work, 2.5 short years ago with a dozen companies, including Coral Vita, who I should add, if they had tried to apply for permits to touch coral reefs in the United States, they'd still be waiting for them. They're now the largest coral reef restoration company in the world. But we started as a nonprofit, the services that we provided to Coral Vita and companies like them, and we consistently were having conversations about investability. Where's the commercial model for what you do as the Blue Action Lab? And so just last December, we signed a joint venture with Founders Factory based out of London to merge their platform, their architecture, their 15 offices worldwide, their 100 full-time operatives, and our expertise and our on-the-ground resources to start an accelerator. 42 companies will be coming through over the next 3 years. And let's just say that fundraising for that went very, very well. And such that we're looking to start a follow-on fund. So we're moving very, very quickly. Again, money is not the issue. Patient capital, catalytic capital, concessionary capital is needed, but money is not the issue. It's about, I think, accelerating the timeline for these solutions.
Excellent. Right, I'm just going to open up for any questions that anybody might have. No? Hold on. Yeah.
That we got in, just wondering, if the foundation gave you all an unlimited budget, what would you do first to save the coasts?
First of all, very nice of the foundation. Thank you. I'll be looking to sign the agreement after we finish here. But basically, just as I said, develop more projects. Instead of building, right now we're building one project at a time. So we built the Gibraltar project, we went and did fundraising to doing the Jaffa Port project. We're finishing the Jaffa Port project, we're going and fundraising for a third project. Like, it's too slow, I opened EcoWave Power when I was 24 years old, I'm 35 now. It's too slow for me. Like, really, wave energy is existent, our product is working, it's in a very high readiness level, we have orders from all over the world, but really, like, building one after the other is not the most efficient way to do a commercial rollout and to really change the world. So that is something that I would do with the foundation or with any, let's call it a financial partner, is just deciding on building multiple of these assets and showing that the industry can also become profitable. Because many of my colleagues here also spoke about impact. But impact is great, and that's my dream and my vision, of course, doing wave energy, but impact is not enough. We need to create jobs, we need to show that we're competitive with other energy sources, including fossil fuels. If not, you don't have an industry.
The short answer would be to turn the question over to these folks. I mean, Blue Action Lab is in the service of you all, truly. But it's not, while it's not quite as nice as a blank check from the foundation, we're already looking to replicate the model or translate it in the Sea of Cortez in Mexico. We're working with a network of funds out of Mexico City to tailor the services that we provide in our model there. So I think the vision for us would be a global network of these sorts of hubs, of public-private partnerships like what we're doing in Grand Bahama with the unique resources there, and tailoring it to site-specific conditions around the world, Latin America, South Pacific, Southeast Asia, and beyond.
So yeah, I think first what we do, comes back to my kind of analogy with Google Maps, and that would be to collect data along the coasts of the world. And that's really the first step and the foundation, I think, to collecting enough data to be able to predict and really quantify what's going on in the marine environment. And two is then that data can be fed, more into what does diversity mean, and have a better idea how diversity relates to all these ecosystem services that we talked today, because we really can't, direct relate it, it's so complex. And so that would be one. And the second would be back to a previous comment about, how do we make this complex data simple enough for everybody to understand? And that's really key, and that's kind of what we're moving towards as a company, and really putting a lot of resources into that, because we recognize that that's hard. I think earlier it was brought up as an analogy, was like, break the silo, and that's really important, to be able to bring these complex dynamics and make them comprehensible, and so that everybody can join in and see why they're so important.
So first of all, thanks. and second, we if you look at where we apply our technologies, mostly in places where there is environmental awareness. But the problem is that not all those places are responsible for the really major impact on nearshore communities and nearshore ecosystems. If we will be able to use other resources and go and make a change in places like Tanzania and Kenya, where we did a lot of studies on the impact of coastal construction, island states that are very limited in their resources. This can create the impact. Even if we look at this, our beautiful Mediterranean, if you look south of us, environmental awareness is not the first thing that they're addressing. And there's going to be massive construction coming up on ports on the North African shorelines, just because of different economical trends that are changing. We can see that also on the west coast of Africa. And ecological value, environmental factors are not the major one that are more important there. And those are the area of uplifting. Those are the area of a major fishing industry. The damage that we see, for example, in Eritrea, which is where something like 20% of the fishing fleets in the world are fishing, is horrible. And they don't have a way to tap into new technologies that can uplift the environment.
Anybody else got any other questions? I think one area that we haven't discussed, obviously, which is very, very important with coastal communities, is food and food security and and employment and jobs. A lot of the small fishers are fishing within the coastal communities, within the territorial waters of these countries, and they're the ones that are seeing the huge challenges from overfishing. There's less fish. They're having to go further out in a lot of the developing countries, and I'm wondering if anybody had a point of view. I know that you will, on how do we look at how we're protecting these communities, these small-scale fishers, small-scale fishers, to be able to continue to do their work. What are the other solutions that we can look at in terms of potentially regenerative aquaculture and all of the other solutions that we should be looking around food security and food solutions within the coastal community?
Unfortunately, the Bahamas, Grand Bahama, is a postcard from the future in a lot of ways. Not only low-lying coral atoll, high point on the island is 30 feet, but the coral reefs are suffering severe bleaching. You're seeing fisheries impacted adversely. So food security is a major question on the island. And I was there in February of 2020. COVID was just starting. Supply chains were shutting down. I was literally watching the shelves on the grocery store go bare each successive time I went to the store. And so food security is an imperative on the island, such that we are supporting the construction of a $430 million agri-park, carbon-neutral agri-park on the island. That doesn't answer the question of sustainable fisheries. We're working, engaging with a company that is using CRISPR technology to help grow kale and rice in salinated soils and saltwater. So these are some of the technologies that we're onboarding and in the hopes of answering this critical food security question.
Anybody else want to say anything about food security?
Maybe just in order to create food security, again, a critical thing is to have electricity. And if you're trying to grow, like,
The NASDAQ ticker again?
wave,
Wave.
but nobody needs to know the ticker anymore. I have a blank check from him, so it's okay. We canceled. I'm joking. So, but basically, you do need the electricity, of course, for the fish farms. You need the electricity for everything. Other than that, it creates really enormous employment opportunities, which is something that you also mentioned. According to a new study by OTIP, basically, they're saying that until the year 2050, 10% of all Europe's electricity will be generated by wave energy, which will create about 400,000 jobs, which is very important.
Just maybe if we take this question and we zoom in at the end, when people are looking for resources specifically for consumption, if they don't have other, it will be near-shore fishing. So it's going to be rod fishing, it's going to be diving fishing, it's going to be near-shore fishing. This is like the low-hanging fruit. And if we build in a better way our waterfronts, so suddenly working waterfronts, and suddenly other resources that in the past was not used by local fishing community can be used, like the example that they gave on the breakwater, or in San Diego, for example, one of we found out that when we look at Google Earth since the project was installed, we can actually see the rod fishermen base there. So they're actually marking with the shadow of the roads where the revetment was replaced with an ecological revetment. So in a way, we need to start to understand that there are near home nature in a lot of urbanized coastal area is basically our waterfront. And if our waterfront will not provide us ecosystem services, and ecosystem services include the resources for consumption, then we're going to lose it permanently.
Yeah, and I think there's some great sort of studies out there of the benefits to the economy on land when the ocean is protected, the ocean is healthy within that area, both from, sort of sustainable fishing, but also recreational fishing, recreational diving, everything. That actually when the ocean is healthy within a coastal community, it benefits the economy on land. So I think it's clear from this panel that, actually supporting and protecting and restoring coastal communities is one of the most important things we need to do to, in mitigating what's happening with the climate crisis. And it's not being focused on enough. So we're going to wrap up now, but if there's anything you want to say to the audience, we've got sort of 30-second wrap up. Go for it now.
Thank you for having us. Thank you for inviting us. Next time, come with questions prepared in advance.
Well, this has been an incredible event so far. Thank you to our hosts. But I invite you all to come down to Grand Bahama, please. We'll do this next year down there.
That's good.
I'll jump and say that it's very unique, and the way that Monaco is treating and becoming a hub for idea exchange, and that we have a discussion here, and we said, oh yeah, we work in U.S. in the same place, and we met those people in New York and those people in the GCC, and it become a hub for knowledge, which I greatly appreciate.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. And I go back to that. It really is. It'll take everybody. There's a lot of great solutions up here, and just the connections that have been made here. Everybody's connected another way and can help each other out. And that collaboration is what it's really going to take. If we're going to make it and make some of these long sustainable goals. So.
And I'll echo that. Thank you very much to the Foundation for putting this on, for being such visionaries within the ocean, the climate. The Prince is an absolute leader in the ocean space, and we're very grateful for all the work that he's doing and the connectivity that he's enabling to try for us to win the next 7 years and to be able to save, restore the ocean, and therefore to protect humanity. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much to all of you, Chris, to all of our panelists. No, it's okay, you can go. Yes, it is time now for our lunch break. Please enjoy this time now to eat, to relax, to network. But please, everyone, if you could all be back here at 2:20 p.m.